Now, the other important thing that you need to know when you know about tenants is data center. Okay. Data center is something that you need to know when you're aware of tenants actually. Okay. So data center is nothing but a hosted server. Okay. So traditional software system, on-premise systems will have a physical server within the organization, right? Similarly, all the cloud computing systems will have their server hosted in cloud actually. Okay. So those are typically called as a data center, and data centers are nothing but hosted servers. Okay. So where all your data will get stored actually. Okay. The data center will store all the data. So data centers, we have multiple data centers in Workday. Okay. The data that you input in Workday, ideally, that goes and sit in data center. And the moment data gets into data center, all the data will get encrypted actually. No one can understand the data in the data center because it is highly secured, highly, the confidential, and Workday maintains everything as a cautious. And the moment you input your data in Workday, and when it gets stored in cloud, everything will be encrypted. No one will have access to that to decrypt that data that enters into the data center. Okay, so in terms of payroll data, in terms of employee personal data, in terms of employee benefits, in terms of employee compensation details, these are all in a sensitive information. Every organization will prefer this information should be confidential actually. And Workday maintains same kind of scenario that the moment you enter data into Workday, everything will get encrypted, and you cannot decrypt that data actually. Okay, everything is highly secure. Okay. So that's on the data center definition, I can say. And as I said, right, we have multiple data centers. Now we'll try to understand what type of data centers we have in Workday. Okay. So basically, data center, you can technically, or a kind of simple definition that you can think is, these are hosted servers in cloud which stores the data that you input in Workday. Okay, the kind of servers. Okay, in traditional language, if you think of any kind of physical servers, in updated current technology language, if we talk about data centers actually. Okay, so we have 4 data centers. One is Ashburn data center. The other one is Dublin or Portland data center. The other one is Dublin. The other one is Atlanta data center. These are the 4 data centers Workday maintains, and all the Workday tenants that we currently have, okay, across the globe, okay, who are into Workday, their tenant should be from any of these data center. Let's say Amazon is using Workday HRIS. Okay, so Amazon tenant has to be in one of these data center. Google is a Workday customer. Okay, Google's tenant should be in any of these data center. Okay, so these are the 4 data centers where all the tenants that Workday has will be under these data centers. Okay, but we need to know which tenant or which data center our tenant is sitting in. So we need to have this information so that anytime, rarely you'll be seeing some kind of performance issues with Workday actually. Okay, when you see such kind of performance issues, Workday will send a communication to all the customers of that particular data center saying that your Ashburn data center is impacted, so you cannot access your tenant under Ashburn production data center. So you'll not be able to access your production environment. Workday will send a communication. So when this kind of communication you get, you need to understand which tenant is from which data center. You need to understand this clearly so that you'll be able to take actions based on the communication that you get from Workday. Okay. So data center is nothing but, which is typically a hosted server that will be holding all the data that you input in Workday. Okay, so we have 4 data centers. One is Ashburn, Portland, Dublin, and Atlanta. These are the private data center. Okay, note that these are private data center, meaning these are owned by Workday. Okay, Workday manages these things. That is the reason why you call it as a private data center. Okay, so Ashburn data center, if you wanted to understand, okay, if your tenant is in Ashburn data center, if you wanted to understand whether it is in Ashburn or a different data center, your tenant URL will start with WD1. Okay, WD1. If it is your production data, www.myworkday.com. Myworkday.com. If your organization name is ABC, your organization name, and typically login, your extension will be added. Okay, this is a typical Workday URL you will be seeing. Okay, so your tenant URL, if your tenant is sitting in Ashburn data center, it starts with WD1. So all tenants, if you see that starting with the WD1, those tenants are sitting in Ashburn data center. Okay, and whenever you see myworkday.com in the URL, it means that your tenant is a production tenant actually. Okay, whenever you see www.myworkday.com, it is a production tenant. Okay. Another case, if you wanted to have sandbox URL, okay, sandbox URL will start with impl.workday.com, your organization name, and login extension. Okay, this would be your sandbox URL. Okay, and then implementation tenant. Okay, WD1 www.impl.workday.com. Here, you should identify the difference actually. Whenever you are accessing implementation tenant, your organization name is there, right? That will be sequenced with number. Okay. If you have one implementation tenant, it will be one sequence, numeric sequence added. This is an impl tenant. Short, we call it as an impl tenant. And similarly, if you have multiple implementation tenants, this sequence go on. If you have 2 implementation tenants, this will be ABC1 and ABC2. If you have 3 implementation tenants or 10 implementation tenants, it will be every tenant URL will be sequenced with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like this. If you have tenant URL, you should be seeing the number sequenced with the tenant number actually. Okay. So which you can take that you have 10 implementation tenants. Okay. You can treat this as a tenant URL for impl tenant actually. Okay. And the other thing is preview tenant. Okay. The same you will see as sandbox. Only the thing is ABC underscore preview you will see. Organization name underscore preview you will see. The tenant URL. The rest of the things will be same. So this is how your tenant URL will be drafted. Whenever you see WD1 in your tenant URL, take that as your tenant is sitting in Ashburn data center. Okay. So whenever you're seeing any kind of communication from Workday saying that your tenant is down because of the performance issue, and Workday is looking into this. If you get this, you should be aware of which data center your tenant is sitting in and check the communication whether data center is provided or not and ensure that it is impacted or it is not impacted. Okay. So basically, WD1 is a Ashburn data center prefix that you need to identify. Okay. And coming to Portland. Okay. Everything will be the same. Okay. URL will be, everything will be the same. Only the difference would be the prefix actually. For Portland, it will be D5. Okay. Portland data center will be D5. If your prefix tenant URL is starting with prefix WD5, which means that your tenant is sitting in Portland data center. Okay. And coming to Dublin also, everything is same, only prefix varies here. It will be, everything will be the same, and the URL will be prefixed with WD3. The WD3 is a Dublin data center prefix where your tenant can be resided in. Okay. And coming to Atlanta, it will start with WD2. Okay. Everything in the URL will remain same, but the prefix will start with WD2. Okay. Okay. WD2 is the Workday prefix we should be seeing for Atlanta data centers. These are the 4 data centers you can see where your tenant is residing in. Okay. And these are all private data centers. Okay. And all the US customers will be sitting in Ashburn and Portland data center. So when I say US customers, any customer whose registered office address is in US country, their tenants will be sitting in Ashburn and Portland data center. Let's say, for example, Amazon. Okay. Amazon is a company. Okay. So Amazon registered office US is somewhere in US. Okay. Since Amazon registered office address is in US, the tenant of Amazon can be either of this one. Either it can be Ashburn or either it can be Portland. It cannot be this one. It can be this one also. Recently, Workday started this one. Anyone can come, but Dublin, US customers will not be. Dublin is dedicated for European customers. Okay. So you'll see all the Dublin tenants are having customers registered address in anywhere in Europe. Okay, that's why Dublin data center majorly you'll be seeing all the European customers from Paris, France, okay, Brussels, Belgium. All these are European countries. You should be finding their tenant is sitting in Dublin data center. And Atlanta, Portland, Ashburn, these are typically open for all other countries. But basically, any organization who is using country from US, based on the kind of allocation, Workday can grant access to Ashburn data center or Portland data center or Atlanta data center. Okay. These 3 are the data center where you can see. Let's say for Amazon is in the US, okay, the registered office in US, but they have all the offices in different countries. Okay, different countries it has, and they can also have the same data center, the same tenant URL. Only the thing is, Workday will consider when they are actually allocating a tenant based on the registered office address, they actually assign any of this tenant actually. Okay. And again, I'm saying these are private data centers which are owned by Workday. Okay. So no other environment or any kind of other system will be sitting in this private data center. Only Workday data, since Workday is, Workday is managing all these data centers, all the data from Workday will be sitting in these data centers actually. Okay. And that is the reason why we call it as a private data center, since it is owned by Workday. No other the companies involved in managing this data center. That is typically a single unique kind of data center which everyone will have. Okay, so and recently Workday started something called public data centers. Okay, other than Ashburn, Portland, Dublin, Atlanta, Workday has recently, it's not even 1 year also. I think it's hardly 6 months before Workday started public data centers. Okay. No one I think things have started, but we don't have any kind of official communication that now customers are sitting in public data centers. Such kind of customers Workday has not updated or they have not revealed it, meaning that there are no customers yet into public data centers. So Workday has got a concept called public data center very recently, where those customers can be in public data centers. Okay, so public data centers are GCP, which is nothing but a Google Cloud Platform. The other one is AWS. Okay, Amazon Web Service Storage. Okay, these are the public data centers. Okay, these are the two public data centers. So Workday has got recently. Workday has subscribed for this one. So Workday is selecting only few customers. Workday is selecting only few customers. They're not giving any specific criteria. They're not giving any specific criteria. No, the Workday has not got into Azure actually. They've got only GCP and AWS. They've not subscribed for Azure. Only these two are the public data centers they actually got into. And they are not giving any kind of specific criteria. Only these customers have to come to these public data centers. They have randomly picked some of the customers and they have sent communications. So you're shortlisted to get into public data centers, and they're giving some kind of benefits. Okay, when you get into public data center, your weekend maintenance will not be there. Your tenants will not be down during maintenance. Everything will be, you can access your tenant 24 by 7 every week, weekends actually. Okay, so there won't be any kind of disconnect for 3 or 4 hours due to maintenance activity, as how you see in private data centers. In public data centers, you will not see those kind of interruption. You can see uninterrupted, Workday access even in weekends. Because that is one of the benefit that Workday is showcasing, and your tenant URLs also will get changed. Okay. Here you are seeing WT2, right? Probably you should be getting something like 100 or something like 150 or 140 kind of tenant URLs. Something we have seen actually in one of the webinar I have attended. So they have showcased your tenant URLs also will get changed. Okay, so that's the reason most of the customers are not interested to get into public data centers, because everything will get changed. Okay, tenant URLs will get changed, and your data has to be moved into private to public data center. A lot of stuff is there, and Workday is assuring that they'll take care of everything. We don't need to do anything. They'll migrate our tenants to public data center, and then we can actually start looking into public data center. Okay. So still we don't have any kind of use cases to talk more on this, because Workday has recently started this one, and there is no customer yet, or very less number of customers into private data centers. Okay, there was a request for one of the customer that I was supporting, but they were not interested actually. Okay, they were not interested because all the URLs of APIs will get changed, and a lot of dependencies are there. They were not interested, but Workday was actually insisting them, because they have shortlisted that customer. Okay, so they said it can take time and you can move to a public data center is what Workday say. So there are no kind of live examples for public data centers, because it has recently started. Don't think major customers are currently in a public data center, but we can see in next 1 year we should be seeing some of the customers will be in Workday public data centers where they'll not be experiencing any kind of tenant downtime during the maintenance window as well. Okay, that will be going, and parallelly your tenant access also will be managed. You should be able to access your tenant without any kind of interruption during weekends. That's about the public data center. Okay. So these are the things that you need to be clear. Private data center, which tenant is sitting in which data center is something that you need to be aware. Okay. So whenever you're working on any integrations, okay, so you need to send data from one system to other system, and that other system might ask, we need to whitelist your IP address. Okay, share the IP address is what that external system will accept. Okay, so based on the data centers, you'll have IP address generated actually. Okay, so if you know which data center tenant which data center your tenant is sitting in, you should be able to find the IP address from Workday community. You'll not find in Workday, but you should be having all this information in Workday community. Okay. I'll take a pause here. Okay, so I wanted to check anyone have any questions. Anything unclear? Yeah.
I understood about this. Can you please show us like how live the environment looks like?
So that will do. Okay, we are not talking about Workday instance here. We're talking about data centers. Okay.
Right. But overall, just
so we have navigation sessions. We'll be getting into Workday environment. Okay. So once we are done with intro sessions, we'll be getting into navigations where we'll be talking through all the navigations of Workday.
So how do you determine the data centers?
Data center is nothing but a kind of hosted servers which will be holding all the data from Workday. The data that you input in Workday or the data that gets stored in Workday at end of the day, that should go and sit in a server. In technical language, Workday language, we call it as a data center. Okay, so if you're aware of any traditional software application, okay, so we used to have a kind of physical servers. Okay, a strong room will be there. So we used to have a kind of physical server where all the data used to go and sit in those physical servers. Okay, but Workday is a cloud computing system. There is no physical server. Everything will be sitting in cloud actually. Okay, that cloud data center is typically called as the cloud server is typically called as a data center in Workday. Okay, all the data that you input in Workday or every employee will input in Workday will be managing by data center, will go and sit in data center actually.
And the maintenance is it once a week or every 2 weeks?
No.
Maintenance.
Maintenance will be taken care by Workday. So we don't need to, as a customer or as a partner, you don't need to worry about how data center is actually behaving. If there is any kind of performance issue, you need to fix the issue. It's not the customer resource responsibility. It's Workday responsibility. Workday will be taking care of all the issues of data center, all the issues of tenants also. As a customer or as a partner, we just need to utilize what Workday has provided to us.
How often?
What do you mean by how often?
Last week you mentioned like maintenance is once a week at the end of the week.
That is tenant actually. Okay, so tenant will be going for maintenance activity every week. So Workday will be checking any kind of performance issues there, any kind of patchworks that they need to perform, any kind of bugs they need to fix. So every weekend, Workday will be taking care of all these kind of issues during the maintenance window. Okay. So tenants will go for maintenance every week actually.
Amit, as you said that we have to check whether in which data center it is. So which issue will arise so that we have to check, like how we'll go and check, like I have not understood.
Very rarely you'll be seeing some kind of performance issues. Okay, so recently, I think 2 months back. Okay, 2 months back, I've seen one of the very first time I've seen that. Okay, so I think it was in Portland data center, I believe. Okay, so in Portland data center, because of some power issue. Okay, because of power issue, data center was down. And hardly, Workday will take 10 or 15 minutes to identify the issue and fix the issue. 10 to 15, they'll quickly respond and fix the data center issue. But that was the first time. It was around 5 hours. Okay, 5 hours. Portland data centers were down because of the issue in the data center, Portland data center. So Workday was sending communications to customers. So your Portland data center has got impacted because of some power outage, which Workday is looking into this, and it might take another 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, like that. It has went for 5 hours, and after 5 hours, they've identified what was the issue, and they've rectified it. They've ensured that this will not happen again. That was the only time we've seen 5 hours workdays down during the weekdays, actually. Okay. So because of the issue in the data center, Portland data center were not accessible, and they have sent a communication to all the customers of Portland data center saying that your tenant will not be accessible because of this issue, and Workday is looking into this issue to fix. So such kind of communication you will be saying. So whenever you see such kind of things, you need to analyze the impact. Okay. So what is the impact if tenant is not available? If there is any kind of scheduled jobs that are running, okay. So what about those scheduled jobs? What will happen to those scheduled jobs? Okay. Since you're not able to access tenant, okay, you cannot do anything. Okay. Hardly you'll be sending a communication to all the stakeholders saying that Workday is down, so we cannot perform any action. Any kind of impacts on the schedules, jobs will be rerunning again. Once the tenant is back, you will be sending a communication. That's the only thing. But once tenant is back, you'll check everything. What has got impacted? Any kind of scheduled jobs got aborted. We'll rerun them again to see that data flow is happening correctly or not. So that kind of issues very rarely. So it's not that regularly you'll see.
Yeah, I understood this, but we have to give the data. So we have to check like in which data center the system is down. So we have to give this data. We have to give this solution to Workday, or like what? Like that, I'm confused.
What solution you'll give? You'll not give any
No,
solution.
so
You'll
not
take care of
solution,
your
not
tenant, actually.
we will tell, right? So, where the data center is, where the data is having the issue.
Who will tell? Workday will tell, actually. Workday will tell to all the customers. Okay, your data center, all the Portland data center got impacted. Okay, so if you are not aware of which tenant is sitting under your which data center, you'll not identify that, actually. Workday will send a communication. All Ashburn data center got impacted because of this issue. If you know how to identify your tenant under Ashburn data center, which starts with WD1 prefix, you should be able to understand your tenant has got impacted. If you're not aware of that, you don't know.
Oh,
which
okay.
tenant
Now
is.
got it. Now got it. Okay.
Okay.
Amit, I have a question. We talk about off-premise. So for on-premise, we are using here
Your voice is a
AWS,
little low.
GCP. Hello,
Voice is a little low.
yeah. Okay. Hello, it's fine now.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm asking, we talk about the off-premise side for the private data center, and for the public data center, if I say, you say that for AWS and for GCP, the WD code will be different for Atlanta, Dublin, Portland, and Ashburn.
Yeah, completely different. So those will go off, actually. Okay, WT2, D3, D4 will go off. Okay, something we recently saw in a webinar, something is starting with the W100, WD100, WD200, 400 kind of prefixes that we have seen. But we don't know clearly which one is accurate for which public data center, we don't know. Okay, probably we need to have some kind of live cases in near future.
So basically, it will take some more time, right, to be in those. Be into public.
So yeah, they have given October this year as a kind of target date, actually. Okay, so by this October, people should where Workday has shortlisted some of the customers, right? They have given time. October 2024 should be the target date that you can plan for your migration from private to public data center. But I don't know what's going on. We need to. Workday will be getting some kind of webinars. Okay, so what is the update on this activity kind of things? Workday will be scheduling some kind of webinars. If there are any kind of live scenarios or use cases, if some customers are in public data center, Workday will reveal all those details in one of the webinar. But I think the there was no webinar scheduled so far from last webinar I've attended. So if there is anything, you should be getting a kind of communication actually. Okay, you should be getting communication, or you should be able to access this information in Workday community. All these things you should be able to.
One more thing, you said that Atlanta is open for all over the rest of the world apart from Europe and US. So is it used for US also, Atlanta?
Yeah, Atlanta also is used for US also. Yeah. So WD1, which is Ashburn, D5, which is Portland, and D2, which is Atlanta. Mainly for all the customers whose registration address is in US, Workday will actually do. But outside of that, how much space tenant needs to be granted with, what is the head count of the employee, based on this, what is the load that tenant can actually bear, all this kind of considerations Workday will make, and they can actually go with Ashburn, Portland, or Atlanta data centers. Clear? Any question?
Okay, and one more thing, Dublin, you said it's only for Europe only, or it can be open for others also.
Which is that?
Dublin, the Ireland one.
Dublin is only for European countries. You cannot have any US customer or UAE customer into the Dublin data center. It holds only customers from Europe.
Thanks.
Miss, I'm a little confused. Ashburn and Portland is specifically for US. Atlanta is for US and other countries. Is that so? And Dublin for European?
Dublin is only for European, and Ashburn, Portland, Atlanta can be for US, and also if a customer is from US registration address and they have offices in India, in UAE, in all other countries, Singapore, Malaysia, they can use the same URL for their offices in other countries. Okay, because your tenant is registered in one address and Workday has granted a specific data center for you.
So, and if the country is registered in India completely, then?
Ashburn, Portland, Atlanta. Okay, so all the US customers will be part of these three data centers, and also if any US customer, let's take Amazon. Okay, Amazon is a US customer where their corporate registered office is in US actually. Okay, but they have all their offices in India, Singapore, in all the countries they have. Okay, so it doesn't mean that they have their offices in different countries. The URL will change. No, okay, based on the registration address, Workday has granted WD5 as a kind of data center, and all the employees from different countries can access Workday with the same URL, which starts with WD5. Okay. So Atlanta data center, I think we got very recently, 2 years back we got. So mostly I've seen US as well as Singapore-based organizations or Malaysia-based customers who are into Workday, Thailand. Okay, so all this kind of organization who are based in Asian region. So they all are with the WD2. Okay, so might be Workday is considering a headcount of the organization and the kind of load that it can bear. According to that, they'll be categorizing the tenant actually. So they don't share all these strategies, but so we can actually see that since all the Asian the customers are into Atlanta data center, if anything starts from India, something should go with Atlanta data center is what you can assume.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions anyone have? Okay, so tomorrow what we're going to start is, this is something, last session tenant strategy, and today's session about data centers and difference between private and public data centers. So the information we have seen, what's happening with the private data center and what is happening with public data center is what we have known. Public data centers, a lot of information has to come, and I think you should be seeing probably next 6 months or 1 year. So there should be at least minimum level of customers in public data center. Okay, you should be seeing some kind of examples probably next 3 to 4 months, because they have given October as a kind of target. At least by this time, some of the customers can get into this. Okay. That's about tenants and data centers, which is very important for you to actually understand types of tenant and types of data centers. How these two are associated is what you need to understand.